Hello Rebrand gang, and welcome to episode 36 of Rebrand Everything. Today we are going to be rebranding JD Sports, and this idea comes from James, so thanks James. He submitted the idea over on rebrandeverything.com. Let's get on with it. So as always with a logo design project, I start out by just finding out as much as I can about the company, looking at their current branding, their current website, their current logo, how they just generally project themselves and portray themselves, and also look through things such as like their old logos, their old branding, and just generally find out what they've had up until this point that sort of got them to where they are now. So JD Sports is a sports fashion shop from the UK, but it's also spread out across the globe. I found out that the name JD basically came from the two people who started it. It's just their first initials put together, so no crazy backstory there. And that was pretty much all that I could find out about the logo itself. I wasn't sure exactly why the J looks like it does. It's kind of just this weird shape that sort of reminds me of the Atari logo, but I looked back through their older logos and saw this little gem here, this classic JD Sports logo, and I think the new logo uses that J just as a little nod to their previous branding. Their current homepage looks like this, and as you can see they use their logo in two different ways in this first screen of the homepage. One up here in the top left which actually has JD on its own, not with the word sports, and then says Undisputed King of Trainers, which is interesting. And then in this main panel graphic in the middle it says I am JD, and that's the logo that's kind of the main logo where it's the white letters inside the black circle. I think that the icon itself looks okay when it's inside the circle, but I'm not a great fan of it when it doesn't have that circle around it. I find it a little bit uncomfortable the way it's used next to this Undisputed King of Trainers in the header bar. The good part about their current logo is that it is very adaptable, and they can use it with the circle, without the circle. You can see it on the signage when you look on Google Images, and they use this strong black and white, which is really good, really strong. You can't get more contrast in than that, and there is literally no grey areas in their branding. So even though there isn't too much wrong with their current logo, we're going to have a look at rebranding it today and see what we can come up with. Let's go. So at the sketching stage I was thinking about how the brand is so strong now that they can just call themselves JD and nobody confuses it for Jack Daniels. They know exactly what they mean even though they're not using the word sports. However, I feel like if they had a new logo, it would be a good idea to make sure it would work with the word sports, but think about in the future removing the word sports and making sure the icon still works as a standalone. Now, a sports clothing shop has a pretty wide range of products, so it is difficult to solely focus on one to create a logo around. So my options are revolving around letters rather than trying to incorporate too many icons or symbols. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to capture the vibe of the shop and put that into visual form to create something that sort of fits with the sportswear brand. And it's kind of like, because it's the shop that sells all the top like sports brands, it's kind of like the umbrella, the first thing you'll see that kind of wants to fit in with them so it doesn't look completely ridiculous. It just needs to fit that vibe of sort of sportswear. Because JD already used just black and white, I think it's a good idea to keep that, and that also helps when at the sketching stage, because I normally just like to sketch out my ideas in black and white to ensure they'll work as a single colour. So it's good to, because you're kind of one step closer to the final product when you're sketching it out and you've got the colours right already. Please don't forget to press like if you're enjoying the vid, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Cheers.
1.
For option 1, I wanted to simply adjust what they're already using to make it a little bit more comfortable for my eyes. I started with Futura Bold Oblique as it had like a nice little slant to it, nothing too aggressive and nothing too crazy, and the font is just generally clean and easy to read. Didn't like the bottom of the J, how that looked, and when I started looking at the J, because of the J in the original logo, when I started looking at it and zooming in, I started getting really fussy about it. The bottom of the J in Futura Bold Oblique seemed to look a little bit kinked, like just ever so slightly kinked. So I overlaid a perfect circle which I could then use as like a template for when I was adjusting the anchor points on the J, just to make sure it was a nice smooth curve. Once I'd got the letters just how I liked them, I thought they looked a lot better. And I liked the look of the new icon, and I did like it on the black circle, but I thought I could make it even more versatile by using a white background and then putting a stroke on the outside. And then what that would mean is when they use their logo without the circle, they don't even need to change the colour of it. I hope that makes sense. And then I incorporated the word sports on the right hand side in all caps just so it matched the icon. But obviously when that's removed, it's still going to be recognisable as the JD logo, as it's in like a circle of its own anyway.
2.
So for option 2, although I wasn't keen on shoehorning the idea of putting loads of like symbolism into the logo, I did draw out this little idea which was like a ball in motion concept, and I'd drawn that out at the sketching stage, and I just thought maybe it'd be worth trying to take that through to like a proper logo. So the idea I'd sketched out made it look like the dot on the top of the J was like shooting through the hole in the D. No real particular reason for it other than like ball sports, and it's like a sports shop, so there's maybe some sort of link there. So I started drawing out the cartoon motion lines and did the trick where you put the fatter white stroke behind the thinner black stroke, and by doing this it just makes the thinner black stroke look like it has a white stroke around it, which when put in front of the characters breaks it off that background and makes it look like it's coming in front of them. The cartoon motion lines didn't work too well with the thickness of the characters, and it started just looking a little bit sort of thin and delicate for the kind of logo that I wanted to create. So I tried creating a different shape that still indicated that the dot was moving. The triangle that I used seemed to give like this good perspective effect that made it look like it was sort of whizzing out through the D and sort of coming like closer to the camera for the top of the J, which was quite a cool effect. And I thought even though the triangle's covering up quite a lot of the D, it's still very clearly readable as JD. So I thought the idea looked quite cool and could work. And then as a finishing touch, I tried reversing the colours and using the icon inside a black box, and actually that looked a lot better to my eyes. I'm not sure why, it just seemed to really pop out of the black box, which is cool. And also the other good thing about putting this inside a box was that I haven't got to worry about trying to align the text to the right hand side, worrying about the bits hanging off the top and bottom and like the jagged edges around the silhouette of the icon. By putting it in a box, it just makes it very clean and very clear, and it makes it easy to position the word sports beneath it, just aligned left and aligned right. It just looks neat and tidy, and you haven't got to worry about trying to visually align it with the JD icon itself.
3.
For option 3, I wanted to make the JD part of the logo a little bit more like a logo and a little bit less just like a standard text that's been typed out. At the sketching phase, I'd drawn out this little idea which was a smooth and tidy icon which makes the shape of JD, but the two letters are kind of linked together as a single unit. So I built this how I'd normally create something like this, which is turn on the grid in Illustrator, turn on snap to grid just so it's all mathematically perfect, and then draw out rectangles to sort of flesh out the design, and then grab the corners and round them just using that live corner thing that's in Illustrator. Once I'd drawn it out, I fattened up the stroke. I just played around with it until I got that perfect thickness, which is kind of a balance between the negative space inside and the thickness of the lines. And it seems like probably the white area inside the black lines is probably double the thickness of the stroke. That seemed to be about the sweet spot. So I like the look of this, but similar to option 2, I didn't like the actual silhouette of the logo. It was kind of hard to work with. So I put it inside a dark box. It did give it more impact. It seemed to really stand out off that dark background, and also putting it inside a square or a circle cleaned up that footprint, makes it easier to sort of put the word sports next to it without it looking sort of unbalanced and untidy. I do feel like this whole idea might be making it complicated for no reason. However, I do think that the style of icon that we got here could be developed across the branding and incorporated into the rest of it to sort of build this like solid framework.
4.
So to inject a little bit more energy into option 4, I wanted to try like a scripty style font to make a more free-flowing logo and just give it generally a different feel. So I had a look in my fonts palette and used the filter and just chose script fonts and just had a quick look through there, and I was trying to find one that fitted the sort of relaxed feel that a sports shop might have. A lot of the calligraphy fonts just look a little bit too formal for what I was trying to achieve. They're kind of a little bit too rigid and perfect, and it kind of looks more like what you'd see on like an invitation to a wedding or an event rather than like what you'd see for a sports shop. So with a little bit more looking through, I settled on 2 fonts. One was called Blackjack and one was called Milkshake, and they just had a lot more like free flowing stroke and kind of varying thicknesses and stuff like that. It just didn't look so formal. It just looked a lot more like what you'd expect for maybe a sports shop. Because I'd chosen 2, I didn't know which one would work best once I'd sort of fleshed out the idea, so I decided to develop both of them forwards and then sort of fight them to the death at the end and see which one worked better. What I did was outline it, used the white arrow tool, the direct selection tool, to grab them internal parts of them loops and cut them out and paste them in front, and then just made them black, and that just filled in that area that the loop would be in, and it sort of makes it look like it's popping out of the circle, which I thought is quite a cool effect and just breaks the grid a little bit, but in a subtle way that's kind of nice.
5.
So for option 5, I turned the grid back on, turned snap to grid back on, and got back to this sort of geometric design ideas. I was developing some different ways of linking up the JD shapes and trying various different directions to sort of see what gave me that light bulb moment of, oh yeah, that looks a lot better than the others. This kind of moment that I can't really describe, it just kind of you'd be playing around, make 10 logos, then all of a sudden one of them just stands out. You think, oh, it just looks a lot better for some reason. And I had a little mini one of them moments when I thought that the lowercase j mixed with the uppercase D was working. So basically it's using the dot of the J as the starting point for the curve of the D. So to allow some breathing room around that black stroke and sort of clean up them lines, I added a thicker white stroke underneath and then adjusted the order of the layers until there was like a mathematically perfect white line around the main black line, which helps just break up the logo and make it very clear that it says JD rather than looking like some sort of special D with an extra tail on the end, because that's the danger. If you crunch the letters together too much without any breaks, it's very hard to read. So I still want this to be very clear that it is a J and a D. And for this option I wanted to add the word sports, but in a different way to just slapping it on the right hand side or just slapping it underneath and sort of fitting the width. So I decided to add this little tab which could be used in the bottom right of the logo, and it sort of looks like it's sliding behind the D, so the left hand side of the tab sort of follows the contour of the D. And I thought that looked quite cool, and also it keeps a lot of room for the fact that JD will probably take the word sports out in the future, so it's not such a structural part of the logo that it won't work without it. So then, what did you think of the options? Do you think this is a worthwhile rebrand, or do you think the JD Sports logo is good and distinctive as it is? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to press like on the video if you liked it. Remember to press subscribe and put the little bell on so you get notifications every week when I upload. If you would like to submit a rebrand idea, visit rebrandeverything.com. Once you've let me know what you think in the comments below, remember to press the little button up here and vote for your favourite option, and we will find out which logo wins. Okay then, Rebrand gang, let's see them final options.